All right, namaste, guys. It's Cam from thefoundationmethod.com. I'm the host of the program today, and this is part of our transformation sessions. I'm here with a good old friend of mine from school days, Mr. Rudi Doku, who's a life coach and also a corporate coach, and he's going to sit with us today and talk to us about his story, his transformation, his journey. So I guess to start things off, my earliest memories of where we met was back at school. I think it was probably grade 9 when you first came to BBC, and
Right.
And I have these great memories of us trying to do like Boys to Men style choir stuff during assembly, and you had the bass voice, and I was like, I don't know, somewhere in the mid range, and I think there was another friend of ours who was doing the highs, and yeah, and then later on, I guess after school, you did a little bit of work in the DJ world, which I was kind of associated with again. And then we sort of separated ways. I went on a big journey of transformation myself, and then more recently, just sort of been reconnecting on social media and seeing, this new of service that you're bringing into the world, and I guess that sparked my whole interest for us to connect and to really hear about that journey, because you went through some really hard stuff at school, same as me. But my memories of what you had to endure, the bullying and, the marginalizing that was going on at the school that we're at, things could have gone a long way the opposite direction for you. And thankful to say that's not the case.
I guess I was a little bit naive coming into the school because, it was branded as a Christian school. So I thought people would behave in a particular way. And I was very surprised with that kind of behavior. So I kind of held back a lot.
It was interesting because I remember there was a vivid memory I had like outside the boarding rooms, and there was a couple of guys trying to make you fight, and I could see you internalizing that, but on the outside, like on the surface level, and I'm sure they couldn't understand what was going on. But because I spent some time in Singapore, and I was quite bullied there with my brother when we were growing up, because we were, some of the only white kids at the school. So Singapore's like a pretty crazy racist type of place. Like if doesn't matter who you are, everyone cops it over there. And and I was like, so I related to that experience of marginalization. And of course, I was so scared that they were going to turn it on me at the same time. But I just remember how peaceful the exterior was, at that stage. But as you were saying, there was a lot going on inside, right?
Yeah, I guess I got a lot of practice from my family of origin,
Right.
Just to make sure that growing up, I just bottled up a lot of my emotions. I didn't, it wasn't wise to maybe reveal how I was feeling inside, because probably no one would have cared.
Right.
Or known what to do with it.
Sure.
We're just all, trained just to get on with life and not worry too much about emotions. That was just the default.
Yeah. And that's also that's that generation as well.
That's right.
No, yeah. So anyway, but like today, like just having a little chat about, I guess what brought you to the point of transformation into this this offering of coaching people to be better at humaning. It's an interesting change and transformation that's gone on in your life. So what was life like for you before that transformative experience? Give us a snapshot of what life was like for you, and I guess for the people that don't know you, a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the backstory.
All right. So I was born in Ghana, and I arrived in Brisbane in 1989, and I went to high school and university. And just skipping ahead, I guess I was a very sensitive individual, but I didn't always express my emotions. I kept a lot of things bottled inside. I used to get angry as well. When I get angry, I wouldn't show it. I would just withdraw, by myself and try to work through my emotions. I was also very sensitive to being criticized by other people. Again, go away, withdraw, because my world was no longer safe for me to interact with people. So that was the pattern. I was also really, really scared of people who were in positions of authority. You know, anyone older than me, a teacher, my elder brother, you know, I don't know. So I was scared of approaching people who were much older than me. And this also played out in the early days of my, you know, professional career, working as a software engineer.
Right.
You know? And then when I also worked in management consulting.
Right.
These things were, I was very worried anytime I needed to have a conversation with someone who was my superior.
Mm.
And this held me back in a number of ways. You know, I wouldn't sleep well. I wasn't digesting my food well. I was putting on weight. My world wasn't safe. Always looking for what's going to go wrong, rather than looking for, you know, what's going to go right. So that might, you know, using the metaphor of the glass half empty rather than the glass half full.
Yeah.
Right. So this kind of affected me for several years, and then yeah, I got the opportunity to to do some reflection after I got some negative feedback from one of my managers. I got this opportunity to lead a small team, and I didn't do terribly well at that because I was just so focused on getting deliverables, like for the client, and not paying too much attention to my own state, my rest, the people around me. I just went on autopilot.
Right.
And then something needed to change. I felt something needed to change. I got the opportunity, you know, to attend coaching school.
Oh, right. So
Yeah.
whereabouts was the coach? Like, what was the decision born from I guess the negative feedback that you got? Like, because what you've shared with me, I guess so far, like I really relate to, as far as you know, these old core belief patterns that we, you know, set up when we're very young.
That's
and
right.
And they become really triggering, like searing pain, like you know, like I might be on stage and have, like, you know, 10,000 adoring fans screaming for the DJ and myself, and it's all going great. And then I look on social media and there's one person going wanker, and then I'm like, oh, like that hurts so much, and I'm just like, well, that's just weird. It's an out of context reaction. So therefore, I've got to sort something there. I got to sort that out, you know? So for me, that, yeah, like that's how I guess I relate to that stuff. So was it a searing enough pain that it made you want to go and invest time in the coaching school?
Cam, I was ashamed. I was embarrassed about how I showed up when I was leading that team. And you know, when you first start leading a team, you don't have experience.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, we don't have experience. So I did a miserable job, and a terrible job, and the feedback wasn't so great. And I made it all about me. I took 100% responsibility for what was actually a combination of other people's decisions.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And they call that the fundamental attribution error, which is one of the cognitive biases when you assume responsibility for everything.
Right.
Rather than understanding, that what happened was a combination of different people's decisions.
Yes.
And so I took some time off. I did some reflection, and then I got the opportunity to do some coaching work, some coaching studies, which then started to help me realize how my upbringing had actually contributed to who I am. I should say also, I started to question some of the leaders I was reporting to. And one thing that became very clear to me is that you want people to perform, then it depends on the level of consciousness of the people who are leading the team.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wasn't terribly, there was particularly probably two people who I admired, and the other as leaders, and the others I thought were pretty average. So I wanted to really go and understand what are the skills that, what are the foundation and the building blocks that make someone an effective leader.
Right.
So I could do that myself, so that I wouldn't have to feel the shame, the embarrassment, and the hurt that I felt or that I experienced in that role in 2011. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Wow. That's a big sort of aha turning moment. Like a lot of people that talk about these sort of, steps towards transformation, some of them are gradual over years and years, but that seems like that one was like a really defining moment of all right, it's time. I need to wake up and I need to lean in rather than run away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. That must have taken a lot of courage, you know.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, but luckily I had the opportunity, to do this.
And so, what was the coaching school, and I guess what were the things that you learned to practice while doing that study that sort of got you to, I guess, where you are now?
Okay, so the coaching school it's called New Ventures West, and they are based out of San Francisco. Yep. And their model is called integral coaching. I was based in Singapore at the time, so they flew out the faculty to come to Singapore 4 times. So it's a 12-month program with 4 modules, and homework and coaching in between. What really blew my mind was really just to understand the stories that I'd made up, the belief system that had taken over me for a long period of time. And I started to realize that, one of the things that blew my mind was I realized that I had suppressed so much anger in my body. And that was really holding me back from being this light, funny person that I could be, this kind of positive force that I could be. And one of the things that blew my mind was my coach gave me this practice called kickboxing, Muay Thai.
Yeah.
Well, I started to do that a couple of times a week. I started to drop weight. I started to feel more lighter. I started to, look good. And if I may say so myself, and things just started to shift.
Yeah.
So, I started to become more confident on the outward, but there was still some inner work that I needed to do because the belief system takes a little bit longer, right, to transition or to transform.
Absolutely. Sometimes lifetime work in progress for some parts of it,
Yeah. So some of the things I did were meditation. I started to, do my 30-minute sitting meditation every morning.
Yeah.
What else did I do? I started to do some, what do you call it, meditation walks, slowly. Yeah.
Conscious walking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I started to do some more journaling.
Yeah, that's useful. Yeah.
In the morning around different, topics that my coach had given me to journal on. I took some singing lessons.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
to develop my voice, so you could hear that deep, rich baritone voice,
That's it.
Yeah. I didn't actually realize that, when I got nervous, I was talking from the top half of my chest.
Yeah.
And then when I got grounded, I started to talk from my core,
Yeah.
So that little transition. So so many things happen.
Yeah.
I guess the most challenging part, Cam, was whenever I had a rupture with my former partner, I used to just have this belief that it was all her fault. Why did she have to talk to me that way? Why did she have to say things in a particular way? And I just kept blaming her for everything.
Right.
And it wasn't, then I had a particular coaching session with my coach. And she said to me, what would she say if she were here right now? What would she be saying if you were here right now? And at that point, it made me realize that I hadn't actually looked at the situation I was discussing with my coach from my partner's perspective. When she said to me, what would she be saying right now? I just went silent. Like, shit. So that was one of those, those moments in my life where I started to see that actually, if anything happens, any event, there are multiple ways to interpret that event, multiple perspectives. Right. So that was a catalyst for part of my transformation. And I read this book called Difficult Conversations.
Okay.
From the Harvard Negotiation Project. That book was very instrumental in helping me to try to step into other people's shoes, see things from their perspectives, and be able to frame the kind of conversation that I'd like to have with them.
I'd like to get a link to that book, so maybe we can pop that into the notes so that if anyone's interested, they can access that. Because that sounds like, I think for me, the internalizing of my anger, I relate to that part as well. Because in my household, healthy anger was stomped on by my dad because it was impolite, it was rude, it was ungrateful. I might have had some really authentic stuff going on that might have, you know, honored genuine, healthy expression of anger. But if there was the slightest hint, my dad would get 10 times as angry, and it just wasn't allowed because he didn't want that energy in the house. Now I can see his perspective on it, but unfortunately, it taught me to internalize to the point where, yeah, I found it very difficult to have confronting conversations without getting triggered. You know? And I think it was one of the things that my we did at a yoga teacher training where they said confrontation with expectation is manipulation, confrontation without compassion is abuse, and confrontation with compassion leads to understanding and resolution. And I think I tried to, you know, once I kind of got that, it allowed me to lean into difficult conversations from a point of view of, you know, that person's got a whole bunch of feelings going on and needs and wants. And, you know, I guess it was part of, you know, my personal transformation of not being so selfish, you know, self-focused, selfish, you know, and yeah, and being able to be humble enough to go, you know, I might not agree with you, but like your opinion is valid as well.
That's a big one. That's a very big one.
Mm-hmm.
I must say that one of the things that was challenging for me was like, it's easy to talk about empathy and it's easy to talk about compassion, right? And for me, it lived in my head. Those two words lived in my head. It wasn't until my heart was broken that I finally started to understand what it meant. You know, when I started to really name how I was feeling inside, I'm feeling very helpless, I'm feeling very vulnerable, I'm feeling very hurt. When I started to name these things and use these words, that's when then I started to think about the other person and how they might be feeling, right? When I got into that, you know, that language, that way of using language, that's what really opened my heart of compassion. Until then, it was just very abstract,
conceptual.
yeah.
And you know, I feel like there as men, and I'm going to generalize here for the sake of the making a point,
but be careful.
yeah but the generalizing the idea of that compartmentalizing our emotions, which is essentially what we're being trained to do in that conventional schooling system, where don't feel this because it's weak, it's not manly. Yeah, men don't cry, men don't express love because you look like a fool. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't be over emotional, just be facts and figures, and you know, not honoring feelings for the messengers that they are, and the connection that they bring between us and other human beings, because we're sort of stuck in this model that gears us towards being, you know, borderline sociopathic maniacs so that we can be leaders of society, of a system that requires us to be like that. And it's like, well, that's not, you know, healthy, certainly not going to propagate the type of connections that we want to see in the future of this planet. But it always, I think it eluded me. Again, I had the similar experience of going, yeah, it's a concept and I can say these things because I'm polite. But when the journey from the head to the heart happens, and generally through suffering and pain, then suddenly it becomes you know, I guess the importance of learning the integration of my feelings, my thoughts in my body, becomes a necessity rather than a luxury or you know, just something that you say at a dinner party. You know, it's something that it's like, oh man, I've got to figure this out, because if not, like, I'm a dad now, and I certainly don't want to be teaching my kid to compartmentalize their feelings so that they can be hashtag successful when they're going to have a blowout by the time they get to midlife and destroy a relationship. Like, you know, like me, you know, like that's, you know, something I went through, you know, and I joke about it. It's like the cold, hard truth turned me cold and hard. You know, it wasn't until I learned to treat myself with love and respect and honor what the feelings were that were going on in me that, that I started to realize, you know, the love and connection that I really desperately wanted to create in my life didn't have an access point, because I built this wall around me of intellect. and intellect stopped me from being up. Like, it was great ideas, but it's got to be from here, right? You know.
Interesting. We spend the first part of our careers trying to, develop the intellect and build up this boundary.
Yeah.
To protect ourselves from these feelings. Then we spend for those of us who choose to go on this journey, we end up trying to find ways to dismantle these.
These walls, to break down the walls. Yeah,
exactly.
The Rumi quote, it's one of my favorites. He says, don't seek outwardly for love, but rather look inside and realize the blocks and the barriers that we built against love. And that's the work that we need to do, And so, yeah, when I read those words, I mean, 15th century poet knew some stuff. It's like, why weren't we taught that at school? Come on, But yeah, so like there was something that you mentioned just before we started videoing today, which was about that the emotional release technique. That can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm interested. I haven't explored or experienced that particular technique.
So this is something called tension and stress release exercise. It was something that was created by a guy by the name of Dr. David Berceli.
Okay.
He's based in the US, North America somewhere, and he did some volunteer work in war-torn regions around the world. And not only is he like a body worker, but he's also a trained clinical psychologist. And he just realized that whenever there was some bombings going on or there was some gunfire, that people would run to the wall and go like this, right? And just curl up. So he recognized that this also happened in animals. I don't know if you've seen like any of the documentaries on National Geographic. Whenever like a big animal comes and pounces on like a little animal, they pretend to be dead.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And when the animal that is attacking like walks away, they just shake, wiggle, and run away.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that documentary, but I mean, we watched the Penguins movie or Penguins documentary last night. Yeah, there was examples of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So tension and stress release exercise is something you can do every day. It's just a set of exercises that you do to stretch, right? Some of the key muscles in the body.
Yeah.
That surround the psoas muscle. So the psoas muscle is the only muscle that connects the upper and the lower body. And as a yogi, you'd know all about this.
Yeah. BKS Iyengar called the psoas the soul muscle. And so there was there's a lot of modern, I guess, research and understanding of the parallels between anxiety and psoas tension, being that if it's like, really, really highly tense and not released enough, then anxiety can be really high. In my experience, like soft belly breathing, which is where we press the belly and the diaphragm down and out to create a stretch in the parasympathetic nerve system, but it also creates a tactile release in the psoas as well. You can feel it on the insertion of the upper trochanter, the lesser trochanter, the inside of the upper thigh where it inserts into, and you can feel it pulling, because I had back injury, so I could feel it pulling on the lower lumbar spine from this deep breathing exercises. And then afterwards, my anxiety thermometer comes on down and I can think better and make better decisions and all that type of stuff. So yeah, 100% relate to it.
Yeah. So after they do those stretches, they just lie on on a mat, a yoga mat. And then the body's natural shaking mechanism kicks in.
Right.
There might be a little bit of positioning that we have to do of the feet, and then the opening of the knees while they're lying on the ground, and the body just starts to shake.
Yeah.
And then as a provider of the service, I just need to make sure that they're not getting overwhelmed and that they are feeling safe and secure.
Yeah.
Right? If the shake is too big, I'll try. It's all about really helping them regulate their nervous system.
Yes.
So that they can feel calm. Very similar. I think we speak the same language. You probably use different terms, but it's all about nervous system regulation.
100%. Yeah. I'm doing a bit of study into the vagus nerve and vagus nerve releasing techniques as a pathway to self-regulate, so that then you can connect the whole brain. And communicate information from the feeling, because we talk about the heart-head disconnect, and we spoke a little bit about that before. But on a physiological level, like it's real. Like it's like if those neural pathways aren't fired and wired together regularly between the heart, I mean the neural plexus, heart, sternum, belly, and pelvis, and you know there's a lot of research into emotions originating from that and going into the hippocampus and then filtering back into the body's response. So when we talk about body wisdom, like a lot of the, I guess, the forefronts of modern integrative therapy are talking about this, you know, this essential need to connect or to improve the connection through the nervous system of the brain and body, so that we can have feelings like intuition. When our gut feeling tells us this isn't, you be careful over here, like here's a narcissistic relationship coming towards you. Oh, I got a gut feeling, as opposed to going, oh, I must be hungry, or not feeling anything. You can actually honor that stuff and go, oh, my body's giving me the ick. I should probably listen to that, you know? And I've certainly had the experience of being disconnected from that.
Cam, I learned a new term for that. It's called neuroception.
Oh, neuroception, cool.
So neuroceptions are like all the organs within your body are talking to each other.
Yes.
Right. And then this thing called neuroception, which runs in the background, Cam, at the moment is working out how you and I are connecting right now over Zoom. Right. It's working out if it's safe for us to connect. It's safe for me to connect with you. It's working out if what's happening outside my apartment here in Melbourne. It's also working out what's happening in South Yarra where I live. Is it safe outside my apartment? Is it safe around my neighborhood? Is it safe in Melbourne? So neuroception is this background process, which is always checking inside and outside you to see if, you know, checking for cues of safety.
Wow. And is
or
that
danger.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I guess the one of the things that I try and communicate as well as the you know, the old reptilian part of the brain, the fight syndrome, fight, flight, freeze, and the fact that that's been built over, you know, millions of years of programming to keep us safe when we're out in nature, and so the tiger doesn't eat us, so that we're safe, right? And you know, trying to get to a point where we can manage that, switch it on and off at will, rather than being run and driven by those old drivers, and therefore making limited choices. When we're in touch of, you know, the whole brain's thinking, the whole body and the brain syncing together, we can recognize, oh, okay, this is just a conversation we're having. I'm safe. I'm in Brisbane. You're in Melbourne. We're safe. You know what I mean? It's time for me to relax and to be available emotionally, to down-regulate myself from my adrenal system so I can connect on a heart level, as opposed to I'm up in adrenals and it's all like fucking intense, and I can only operate on, you know, very limited emotional frequencies. And I just did this Tantra workshop with my partner the other weekend, and she spent the first part of the workshop talking about co-regulation, where you're learning to observe each other's default childhood programming of attachment, and learning to, like, you know, if a partner's really overly aggressive about their needs, it's about like reaching out and touching them and going, oh, like, I'm here for you, I'm listening to you, like I'm not running away. Whereas somebody who's distant and reserved and shy, it's about giving them the space so that then they can feel and move into it when they're feeling more safe. And in that way, you can kind of help, you know, come from this heart space rather than just, again, getting stuck in the cognitive stuff.
I just want to add to that, what you just said. I mean, growing up as a kid, I was, you know, as I said before, I was really scared of adults in my family of origin and adults in general. And so, like, whenever anyone would use any tone of voice that I perceived wasn't safe, you know, I would collapse. I would just withdraw and shut down, right? And go really quiet, because I didn't feel safe within myself, and I didn't feel safe with the other person.
And it's funny because if anyone met you, like, you're, I don't know, how tall are you? Like 6'2"?
6'3".
6'3", 6'3", and you certainly have like a level of physical confidence in the body that the fact that like you would be afraid of anything is mind-boggling to somebody, you know, for most people who meet you, you know. And so that's a really interesting thing, you know, because anyone who meets you person to person is like, he's lovely, engaging, grounded. You make me feel safe. You know, you make people feel safe in your presence. That's one of the gifts I've always known about you. You know, if I'm hanging out with you, I feel like I'm protected, you know. And so it's interesting, like that's the, you know, as those core beliefs of, you know, safety emerge with us, we create these kind of like overcompensations that we want everyone else to feel not what we're feeling, you know.
And the whole thing is that it's this played into my relationships in my adult life. Whereas when someone needed to release energy, like a partner would need to release energy, and they yelled at me or they raised their voice, I would want to shut that down straight away. So I did not have the capacity to co-regulate, especially in the early days. It was much later on that I learned this co-regulation technique, which is to stay there, to deal with it. I didn't quite do what you did, which is to go and put your arm around them. Right. But in the past,
to me, that's new. When I heard that at this workshop, I was like, well, that's like kind of almost the opposite of what I would do. Like someone's like, wow, out there with their needs, that would get me on the back foot. And to learn to lean into that now and say, hey, I'm here with you, is just like, you know, groundbreaking, super simple, you know, but really helpful.
Unfortunately, I made them wrong for you know, for what they did, because I didn't know any better. And I think that's something that happens in a lot of relationships. We make people wrong, you know, when we don't understand our own nervous systems and what is going on in their nervous system. I think that can be very, you know, tragic. And maybe tragic is too big a word, but very sad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just things don't work out. And I've certainly been through that myself. It's been
So what you were saying, that you did some of this emotional releasing technique as part of the, I guess, the things that you did on this climbing self-awareness mountain, you know. And so what was something, like you said, you did some meditation and some martial arts and some, you know, Muay Thai, and then some of this technique, and of course studying to you know, lead people is going to teach you a lot of you know, self-awareness as well. But was there a point where you kind of went, yeah, I'm kind of getting this now, like where you kind of went, all right, I'm not where I used to be, you know? And do you have any memories around that?
I think it will be when I started to complete this TRE stuff, the tension and release exercise, because that got me to really notice my breathing, you know, paying a lot of attention to my internal state. And then I started to train in something called internal family systems, which is a modality that some therapists use. It was created by a guy called Dick Schwartz. Dr. Schwartz.
We'll get some links for that for later on.
So then I started to just try to connect a lot more with myself and to understand the different parts of me, you know. So that's when I just really started to slow down and I started to feel more compassionate towards myself. And having compassion towards myself really, really freed me to just accept myself as I am.
Absolutely. And I think that's the, you know, I think that's the main word. It's the acceptance that really, and for me in my journey as well, it's that self-acceptance. At that point, once you're there, then the growth can really start. But when you're in that fighting thing of, I don't want to be like this, and that's wrong, and that's bad, and that's broken, and this is, you know, when you're stuck in that quagmire, it's you know, it's a self-fulfilling type of prophecy. It's, you just get stuck in the loop, you know. The internal family stuff, is that kind of like voice dialoguing or like sub-personalities and that type of stuff?
You should be teaching the class, Cam.
Just the stuff I've been doing with John. Actually, he gave me this. We were talking about the sub. He talks about the sub-personality groups. He makes this little emotional age wheel. So it's like starts off here, pyro, like you're in a child's up here, and then these are your young protector systems. You get a bit smarter, and that's your sensible thinking, analytical, rational self that comes in and helps you in your teens. Some people get stuck there, and then the wise, intuitive, a little bit more grown up, and then the sensible adult, grown up energy, which is the sage, which is kind of like getting, connected to intuition, high power, if you're a spiritual person, those type of insights. But then I found this one, human systems. These guys talk about, this is the positive effects wheel. So all these lovely nuances of emotional awareness, and that's the negative side. But they talk about this particular modality, talks about, they call them schemas. So things that we, parts of ourself that scheme ideas of how we see, like filters of the world. Whereas John talks about it in his emotional age wheel, and then your guys talk about it as a family. Is that kind of the same type of idea?
Yeah.
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 Oh, it's cool, man.
Yeah. So all these parts, they have a good intention for us.
Yeah.
And in a very, just to quickly summarize it, when these parts, when they feel seen and they feel witnessed and understood and they feel heard, they just relax a little bit.
Yes, yes. And that's so different to the old psychology approach of, we've got to get rid of this.
Yeah.
I've got to, or even I remember my earlier days in spiritual world, yoga world, talking about the things we're trying to release. I remember seeing these people in tears. Oh, I got so angry. Someone took the mushrooms at the supermarket, and I felt anger. I'm so ashamed. And I was like, fuck, like, you're a vegetarian. You do no harm. Like, we're so angry about, we're so upset. Like, and it was just, I guess it was that misconception of this need to remove stuff. Whereas, as you said, like, it's the embracing of those different parts and just going, hey, I see you, and thanks for your help. Good job, but I'm driving the bus. I'm the adult now, so I'll listen to you, and thanks for all your hard work, but I got it. It's cool,
Yeah, so all these parts, they have a good agenda, and they have a little bit of a concern about what might be what could go wrong, right? So as long as we just tune into them a little bit, get some permission to communicate with them and understand, if they allow us to communicate with them, just to understand what their intention is.
Yeah. How do you do the communication part? Is it a journaling thing, or is it something you do with a partner?
It's something you do with a therapist.
Yep.
And there's different levels you can do it. Some people can go inside, close their eyes and really try to connect, with their body and sense the parts of their body. And with other people who are not quite ready to go that deep, you can just sort of have a dialogue with them. Or you can also start off by doing some drawings.
Yeah.
You can ask someone to draw, to just close their eyes and sense their body and just, connect with their inner self, and then do a representation on paper of what comes up for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then try to find the relationships between the different representations on paper. And these different representations are parts, right? So few different ways to be able to identify these parts and see what we really need and what they want for us.
Yeah, cool. And so was there, I think, did we cover this? I'm getting sidetracked, but was there a moment where you kind of went, like, all of this study that you've been doing and all this stuff, was there a time or a situation that you kind of went through where you were like, I handled that really differently now?
Yeah, so there was a particular situation where I guess I was a little bit, I wasn't grounded. I had like a personal crisis, and I did some work for a client. And even though the work was okay, I ended up maybe not being so compassionate towards the clients. So my delivery of the feedback was probably a little bit, a bit too direct for their own systems to be able to handle.
Yep.
And it was something that I wasn't very proud of. The feedback was effective, but the delivery wasn't very skillful.
So it was kind of a similar situation that you were describing earlier that would have sent you down an emotional spiral that would have been quite intensely triggering. But how was this situation?
Well, there was a part of me that didn't feel I was doing a good job. That's what's going on. So there was another part of me that wanted to overcompensate by showing how skillful I was.
Right.
Can you see that? So I was like, well, I'm going to, you know, give you a lot of feedback,
Yeah.
and do it my way, not in a way that makes you feel safe.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
So then I went back and had a conversation with one of my mentors, and my mentor just said to me, the conditions that allow people to grow are safety. Someone can feel safe within themselves. They can say they can be safe with you. That's how people start to, unfold, to get more secure and grow. So ever since then, the way in which I work with clients has been a lot more kinder. A lot more empathy, a lot more compassion, and they feel so safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was doing some work at a business school in Singapore, and then I just noticed when that change happened, my rating started going up, which it wasn't the intention, but I think the only interpretation I can make was that they actually felt safer with me.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember I don't know, some yoga teacher somewhere. I'm in class. I'm beating myself up for something, right? And he was like, "Oh, you can't hate a seed into growth." You know, he's like, you plant the seed. If you don't water it, it doesn't grow. If you put it in horrible conditions, it doesn't grow. And then you're screaming at it for it to grow. It's not going to grow any better just because you're screaming at it. You know, put it in the right condition, like feed it, water it, nurture it, care about it. And then it'll start to, start to grow. And I think that was kind of a nice analogy for me at the turning point for me in my life. Like I'd recognized where my weak spots were that I needed to work on. I'd started doing the work, but that felt a bit chewy and it was difficult and uncomfortable. And I think where really linchpinned in for me as well was that idea of treating myself with love and compassion as I grow. Because I remember I had this situation where I had a girlfriend who I was teaching yoga, and she'd started learning, and she'd started going to other classes, and she was trying to help. She was trying to help me, and she was saying, "Oh, why don't you teach a bit more like this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you?" And normally that would have just been like massive trigger. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. I would have spiraled out of, like, I would have created overcompensating. I would have tried harder to fix that problem. But I let it go and I went, you know what? This is where I'm at. I'm working hard enough. I'm growing at a natural point. I'm gonna love and nurture myself through this part of the process. And if it's, not what you want to be taught, go to the teacher that's going to teach you that stuff, and I'll get there eventually. And I did get there eventually, and it was okay. But I enjoyed the process, whereas the old me would have done everything to amend that, to get the appreciation. I would have hated the journey. I would have broken myself and everyone around me just to get the success. And at the end of it, I probably wouldn't have remembered any of it. Whereas now I can look back and go, I really enjoyed that journey, and I gave it the love, the self acceptance that was needed for me to really enjoy that transformation process, rather than, I look back at my early 30s when my music career was starting to bloom and, starting to go well. And it was so painful. I was getting everything I wanted, but I was just in so much pain with it. And just
ironic, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. It really is. I look back and I'm like, man, just enjoy that ride. It was pretty good, So, and then I guess now, now that you're kind of on the other side of this journey, and this is what you do full time as your career, and this is, this mentoring process is where you're up to. Is there any sort of bits of wisdom that you would hand back to the earlier Rudi, or people that are, stuck in that quagmire of, the being the victim of their own triggers? Or is there any little bits of wisdom from your experience that you would hand back to help them on that journey?
Yes, yeah. I guess one starting point is that everybody makes sense, right? So if you look back at your history and the journey you had to go on to get to where you are, you make sense.
Yeah.
So,
That's the first time I've heard that quote. That's great.
So the key is then how do we unpack this?
Mm.
You can't do it alone. Work with someone who can help you unpack how your nervous system got shaped.
Yes.
So you can start to understand the things that trigger you, the things that bring you joy, that bring you calmness, and put you into a state of, creativity, curiosity,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah,
give
that's
you
great.
clarity, and none of this stuff is to fix a problem.
Mm.
It's all just to help you to understand yourself better, to appreciate yourself better, so you can be, again, more curious, more calm, more courageous. You can make better decisions. You can connect more with people. Yeah. If you start to think of this as something that people do because they have a problem, because they need to be fixed, I think that's unhelpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
That's really good. That's I think that's the first time I've come across that as a concept. Like everyone makes sense. Like I love it. It's really great because when you spend the time to have enough of a conversation with somebody, it starts to unveil that, it's like, oh, I probably normally wouldn't have connected with you, but now I get you. It's like when you're watching one of those action movies and they set up the character for you to hate the character. And you're like, I hate that character. That guy's so mean and nasty. And then you have a flashback and like, their whole family was, murdered or whatever. And you're like, oh no, like I was wrong about that person. Like they're all right. you know? Yeah. And is there anything else that you'd like to pass on? Anything else?
I think one of the biggest things is that we live in a world of interpretation. Something happens, everybody has got a different interpretation about it. And if we cling on to our own interpretation, to the neglect of other interpretations or perspectives, then we just get trapped into this particular mindset, which may be quite unhelpful for us. And this mindset, it also lives in our body. So what if your thoughts influence your emotions? So just be, even if you are clinging strongly to your particular perspective, also have the courage to be able to be curious about the different perspectives that exist and try to integrate them.
Yeah.
There was a guy I was working with one day, and he said to me, everyone is asking me to change, but I don't want to change. I don't think there's anything wrong with me. And I said, what are the positive aspects of changing? And what are the positive aspects of remaining the same? And can you take the positive aspects of both polarities and leverage them?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so, it's interesting because John talks about this a bit in his teachings, John Nutting, about the problem with black and white thinking.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you've just described there, that idea, because our society, the mechanisms of this current society construct are geared up to celebrate polarity, black and white thinking. You're either on our team or you're on their team. You're either Biden or you're Trump. You're either, New South Wales or Queensland. And it's like, yeah, but, even actually the state of origin's a really good analogy because the guys on the teams all play for different teams all around the country. So they're not Reds or Blues, or they are just for this bit, but everyone buys into it. It's just, it's just how they've managed to push the pain button to manifest this, society of industrialist needs, and consumerism. We love to press that pain button to get the response and the reaction. And black and white thinking is perfect for that. It's a great way to create a market. But it sounds like what you're teaching, and I guess what I'm teaching, and what where I'm pointing my boat is that I want people to climb self-awareness mountain to the point where they can fly their own plane, and they come and do some sessions, and I don't see them again. I see them on social media crushing their goals and having a wonderful life and having a well integrated life rather than just being hashtag power successful, having a really integrated human experience that celebrates all the different parts of their life. And, hopefully then that creates the change that we want to see in the world, So, yeah. No, and well, just before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to share? Is there any other things?
I guess I just wanted to build on the last thing you said. It's the sort of the integration way that you're talking about, which helps us to be able to make better decisions, families, with our colleagues at work, our communities, right? So if you don't, invest some time to do that kind of work, which helps you to connect with yourself and regulate your nervous system, then you can't go out there having an impact to the degree that, or the way you are will have its consequences,
Yes.
Yeah, it will have a toll on you or might affect your relationships with other people. So and actually I discovered that, yoga is one of the only practices that has been researched to really help you. I mean, there are different modalities, but the only one that has been proven through research is yoga. So if you haven't tried a session yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And, I think people, think that, because of the Instagram world, that yoga is about these bunch of exercises we do in spandex pants on a beach. And the reality is yoga just means union. Yoga means connection. So we're doing yoga right now by connecting with each other and connecting the dots about how life is for us. And you do yoga when you go dancing with your friends. You do yoga when you hang out with your family. It's connection, and learning to remember and honor that connection in lots of different ways. There's all the different styles of yoga and different practices that are out there. And if you can breathe, you can do yoga, So I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a nice segue to wrap it up. But thanks for sharing your time today, Rudi. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you in person and hanging out and reminiscing. And
It'll be fun. It's been a long time, a very long time in between drinks.
Too long, man, too long. And cool. So thanks for coming on in. And if anybody enjoyed today's chat, there'll be a bunch of links so you can connect with Rudi. And if you want to ask more questions, or if you want to work with him as a mentor or a coach, and then we'll put some links in there to some of the books that he's mentioned, and the modalities that he's mentioned, so that you can explore them yourself online. And if you've enjoyed these transformation sessions, come and jump onto my website, foundationmethod.com, and there's a free training on there if you just put your email into the mailing list. And it's about an hour where I explore the 6 biggest problems and solutions that I found on my wellness journey that'll fast track your wellness journey so that you can practice, get the transformation you want, and essentially live well. So thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next time. Namaste.